Agriculture is the fifth largest producer of greenhouse gas emissions in Canada. And we don't often talk about farming's use of fuel and some of the technologies that are being developed to help it become more efficient and lower costs and greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm going to talk to Virginia Mulligan, who's the program manager, agri-food innovation at Alberta Innovates, about innovations in Alberta in agriculture to reduce fuel consumption and emissions. So welcome to the interview, Virginia.
Thank you very much for having me, Mark. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy to talk to you about this. Just in general, I know your organization, does a lot of work in this area. What can you give us an overview of the kinds of innovations we're seeing in farming, to improve fuel economy, reduce emissions? Where are we going with that?
Yeah, so what we do at Alberta Innovates, we fund research and innovation. And one of the areas that we fund, as you mentioned, is technology that is going to help us to do a better, be better stewardships of our environment, and that includes decreasing the amount of gas emissions that the industry produce. Some of the technologies that we have, like they really vary. They go from like very basic technology to very applied. And when I mean with basic, you can actually start with biotechnology. There is some technology that we're just working with some livestock breeds so that they can be bred, just kind of increasing or just working with those genes that are going to help to reduce the amount of emissions that you have in manure, for example, or just more effective growth. And when it comes to crops, I mean, I don't want to sound too technical, but when it comes to carbon partition in the crops, if you work on that, you can also help the plant to capture more CO2 and therefore decrease the amount of emissions that we have on the environment. So that's kind of on the basic kind of biotechnology spectrum. But then when we move to technology, we really are sitting in a place where technology is boosting, and we're having so much innovations depending on the field. So if you think about crops, we can think about tractors or just pieces of equipment that are going to utilize fuel in a much more efficient way, and also applications platforms that are going to help a farmer to plan how they're going to use their equipment, how long they have to go with their combine, how long they have to go with a given piece of equipment so that they use less fuel. So not just the piece of equipment that is going to use less fuel, but also a platform that is going to help them to plan and therefore decrease the distance that they have to drive. And so that is intercrop sector. When it comes to livestock, there is a number of research that and innovation also that is going. If you can detect that an animal is sick with machine learning and with cameras, then you in theory can, well, in practice and in theory, my apologies, you can help that animal to be treated in a sooner fashion.
Now, you recently had a competition, the Smart Agriculture Food Digitalization Automation Challenge. Just over $3 million was awarded to a number of projects. Mm-hmm. And there were a couple that caught my eye. And one is technology that enables autonomous farm machinery. Now, we have in our family, of course, like most Canadians, we have family members that are still, involved in farming. And the idea of a seeder or a tractor or a combine that doesn't require a driver and is maybe electric is kind of a cool idea. Is that where we're going?
That's where we're going. Yes, that's the end product. Of course, it's going to take a number of years to get there. You have to start with the machine learning, with artificial intelligence that involves getting to that very final product. But Alberta Innovates has funding projects where you have already autonomous piece of equipment, and you can see that they can run a number of a length of distance by themselves. There is a lot of issues that you have to consider. Well, for example, connectivity. Do you have access to internet? You're a farmer yourself, and you know that sometimes connectivity in rural areas is not the best. So there's a lot of hurdles that we still have to overcome, but definitely that is the end product, and we are getting there.
Now, there was another one about mapping and validating soil-based carbon through, and some science I don't understand, and it won't.
Developing the USDA, yes.
Yeah, and it probably is not constructive to give the title here. But
Yeah.
anyway, the idea of managing carbon in soil and carbon in other parts of the farm, that seems to be, is that getting enough attention these days?
You know what? That's a very good question because in a nutshell, yes, and that comes from having a different philosophy, what is called regen agriculture, right? Now, carbon in where we are in Canada, a large amount of carbon is actually stored in soils, and it's so important that we learn that when we farm, we consider soil health. If you don't have soil, you don't have the agriculture sector. That's pretty much that's the base of it. So what this project is doing is, as you mentioned, is mapping how carbon is going to be stored depending on the agronomy practices that you have in the farm. And the idea is that at the end, farmers are going to be more aware of how to treat their soil, like to do a better treatment. And I mean, our farmers are very conscientious of the importance of soil health, but this tool will be to help them to actually monitor and measure how much carbon they're actually managing with their practices.
Now, my impression from talking to family that's still in farming, and actually 40 some years ago, I did my MA thesis on the transition to power farming in the first part of the 20th
Yeah,
century.
very interesting article, by the way. Yes.
Oh, thank you. And so I'm interested in this because we've seen the evolution over time of farmers' consciousness of these and their application of science, their application of advanced technologies. And my impression is that farmers, farming now is such a capital intensive business. You know, if you've got a $300,000 tractor and a $500,000 combine, and I mean, you really have to be efficient and get the most out of your machinery and your land. Is farming becoming more scientific, as they used to say 100 years ago?
More technical, definitely, yes. The average farmer understands very well those interactions that are happening in the soil, that are happening in their fields, and they're also very technology oriented. They understand very well the importance of the moving to a digitalization area, or bringing more applications and more technology into the area. So yes, I will definitely agree that the average farmer in the province and in Canada is getting way more informed, way more educated as to what practices are better for their field. And as you mentioned, they're very invested into their business, right? Not just from an economic perspective, but also from a personal, a family issue. They're family run, their passion is what they do, and it's of their very best interest to keep the soil healthy for the upcoming generations, and definitely to increase production.
Well, Virginia, thank you very much for your insights. Really appreciate this.
No, thank you very much, Mark.